Welcome to the Trump Breaking News Network, your daily source for up-to-the-minute Trump news. Join us today and every day. Here's today's news.
This is TBNN.
Trump's crackdown on leaks unleashes paranoia, more leaks. By Tyler Durden. There's no denying at this point that the Trump administration is under full attack from career, liberal bureaucrats seeking his prompt demise. The level of leaks emanating from this administration is so unprecedented that it's almost hard to keep up with them. In fact, less than 2 weeks ago we wrote a summary of the 10 biggest leaks of the Trump presidency, which has already been rendered completely obsolete by the barrage of new leaks that have occurred since then. Now, at least according to Reuters and a host of anonymous sources, the very same people who are waging a war against an administration for purposes of political retribution are concerned that the Trump administration is becoming overly paranoid. Shocking. Perhaps they should just continue on as if nothing is happening? Meanwhile, these same people suggest that Trump's efforts to crack down on leakers, which allegedly includes checking cell phones and restricting access to classified servers, is only serving to harm workplace efficiency, because government was so efficient before. President Donald Trump's Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin used his first senior staff meeting last month to tell his new aides he would not tolerate leaks to the news media, sources familiar with the matter said. Current and former officials said that in a departure from past practice, access to a classified computer system at the White House has been tightened by political appointees to prevent professional staffers from seeing memos being prepared for the new president. And at the Department of Homeland Security, some officials told Reuters they fear a witch hunt is underway for the leaker of a draft intelligence report which found little evidence that citizens of 7 Muslim-majority countries covered by Trump's now suspended travel ban pose a threat to the United States. In perhaps the most trenchant effort to deter leaks, White House spokesman Sean Spicer demanded that some aides there surrender their phones so they could be checked for calls or texts to reporters, Politico reported on Sunday. Trump. Apparently the leaks were such a high priority for Treasury Secretary Mnuchin that he used his first staff meeting to inform employees that monitoring their phone calls and emails may become official policy. Of course, despite the warning, the details of the meeting were quickly released to the press. And, as usual, the press continues to quote anonymous sources while official Treasury sources denied the reports in their entirety, making it pretty much impossible for an impartial person to decipher fact from fiction. Several officials in different agencies who spoke to Reuters on condition of anonymity said some employees fear their phone calls and emails may be monitored and that they are reluctant to speak their minds during internal discussions. 2 sources familiar with Mnuchin's first meeting with senior Treasury staff said he told them that their telephone calls and emails could be monitored to prevent leaks. One of the sources said that staff were told that monitoring could become policy. Asked about Mnuchin's comments to his senior staff, a Treasury spokesman said, Secretary Mnuchin had a discussion with staff about confidential information not being shared with the media nor any other sources. In the course of that conversation, the idea of checking phones was not discussed. Asked in a follow-up email whether Mnuchin had raised the possibility of monitoring phones or emails as a matter of policy, the Treasury spokesman replied, it was not discussed. Meanwhile, the paranoia also runs deep at the State Department. At the State Department, the fear of getting caught in a leak investigation or running afoul of White House positions is so acute that some officials will discuss issues only face-to-face rather than use phones, email, texts or other messaging applications, 2 State Department officials said. There is a climate of intimidation, not just about talking to reporters, but also about communicating with colleagues, said one official, speaking on condition of anonymity. There does have to be some degree of trust among colleagues in order to have those kinds of conversations, Toner said. There also is high anxiety in parts of DHS, officials there said. The atmosphere has become toxic, and that is not conducive to the work, said a DHS official on condition of anonymity. They said officials fear phone calls and emails are being monitored to try to find who leaked the draft intelligence report to the Associated Press. And while the Trump administration's boil the ocean approach to finding leakers could work over the long term, We might suggest that the more targeted approach of going after the ringleader might be a more effective. And while we would never suggest abusing one's power for political retribution, perhaps it would now be appropriate for a grand jury to take a look at the many laws that Hillary broke during her tenure at the State Department and thereafter.
That's the news. Join us here every day. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell. See you next time.
This is TBNN.